Okay. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and kick this off. And for those of you who are going to be joining late, you'll just have to hope that I record a lot of this or whatever you miss. So again, my name is Tony Nelson. For those of you who haven't had a chance to meet me, I'm one of the sales engineers here at TerraSky. Basically, I wear a bunch of hats for the U.S. company. I do everything from product management and presentations at Dreamforce all the way to architecture and design discussions and pre-sales handling with our customers and post-sales work. So anything that's got a lot of the technical aspects, I'm one of the few people here in the U.S. that actually stick around and do all of that with our customers. So today we're going to be talking through the Wizard template basics, and essentially this is TerraSky's version of Salesforce Flow, which is why I was asking about that. So this is our attempt at creating something that will allow you to create a step-by-step process by which users can create information within Salesforce. So if you've ever had a situation where you need people to enter in a set of data and then click a next button and then go to screen number 2 and enter in some other data, and maybe there's some conditional logic that tells it where they should go based on the information they've entered. That's a really good use case for Salesforce Flow, and that's also a really good use case for a Wizard template if you're a SkyVisualEditor customer. So just some clarification on what I was asking that question for. Now, what we're going to cover today are two things. First and foremost is going to be our codename Project Ghidorah, and then we're actually going to dive into the demo and leave some time for Q&A. Since it is just me on today's webinar, I'm going to leave the Q&A until the very end, and I'm not really going to even pay attention to the Q&A box, but I would recommend that as you have questions, just put them in there, and when we get to the end, I'll just run down the list and answer all the questions and go back and handle anything that I missed. But because I just don't want to have my attention split too much on today's session. So we've got a lot to cover. But let's go ahead and jump into the demo itself for the Wizard template, and we will just dive right in. So let me get out of this. And what we're looking at on the main screen here is what we call the SkyVisualEditor Design Studio. For those of you who are unfamiliar with SkyVisualEditor, it's got two pieces to it. I'm not going to have time to go through the full beginner stage things with SkyVisualEditor, but I'll cover some basics. SkyVisualEditor comes in two pieces. The first piece is an app exchange package that you download into your organization, and that handles all of the license and usage rights to be able to view pages created with SkyVisualEditor or to have access to the application. Then the Design Studio itself resides outside of the Salesforce platform. It's on our own private cloud, and you can access it by going to SkyVisualEditor.com. When you create a Design Studio, you'll log in, and the first thing that you'll see is a screen that looks like this. Now, it actually will look like this. It's going to present you with information asking you to enter in your Salesforce credentials so we know what organization to connect to. So you'll do that, and then you'll actually get to the studio itself here once you've successfully logged in. Now that we've done this, we can begin creating whatever pages we want. So we're going to start with the Wizard in today's webinar. Let's go to File, click New. We're going to scroll to the left. We have several templates and layouts that are available for users to play with. The Wizard template is the 7th one in the listing, so just go to the left. It's faster. And the way this works is you're going to choose an object by which the entire Wizard is going to be centered around. In today's example, I'm going to use the account object, but it could be a standard object, it could be custom. And the way that you know it's a custom object, for those of you who are less familiar with Salesforce, is that custom objects have this __C at the end of their API names. So if you see, as an example, there's campaign product and then campaign product __C. So we have the name, API name. So that's kind of the format every time you see that in SkyVisualEditor, just so you're aware. And we do that because they can be different. Okay, so once you choose your object, you then give it a name that's appropriate. So we'll call this SVE_webinar wizard and click OK. Now this is going to give us a blank page, absolutely nothing on it. So I'm going to have a nice little gray screen again. And the basic layout of SkyVisualEditor is that all of the components and fields are on the left-hand side, all of the properties exist on the right, and the center big gray area is where the actual page where we're going to design things is going to be laid out. On the right side, if you'll notice with the wizard template, there is a third tab at the top. It's called Wizard. It's the only section in SkyVisualEditor that's got a third tab on the right at the moment. And there is a section about halfway down that says Add Page, and it's blinking yellow. So this is our method of indicating you should start here. So we have 3 different kinds of pages that can be added into wizards. Now these pages you will be familiar with if you're actually using SkyVisualEditor, then you'll have some familiarity with these. If not, I'll briefly explain them. Salesforce layouts. This first icon is designed to replicate the basic look of a Salesforce layout, but give you the full control over designing it however you'd like. A free layout, on the other hand, is designed to give you absolutely no structure whatsoever. Now, why that's important is if you're looking to reproduce a form or some kind of page that needs to have really finite control over where things are placed, then that's done with XY coordinates, so pixel-based manipulation, to get things precisely where you need them so that you can create the page that you'd like. And then the third page is what we call a summary page. So we're going to use the first and the last of the icons today. This middle section, we've got tutorials on how to use the forms inside of SkyVisualEditor. If you want to go look at that, just be aware it's actually able to be used as part of Wizard. I'm just not going to touch it today due to time constraints. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new page. Now if you notice, it's going to be the exact same name as the page that I created with an _1. Each of our wizard templates can have up to 10 pages that exist within them. And then if you have really complex branching logic that needs to take place and you have more than 10 pages that need to exist within a wizard, that's okay. You can connect the final page of one wizard to the starting page of the next and just kind of connect the dots that way. So that's perfectly fine for larger, more complex and intricate processes. Once you've added this page, you click the little pencil button to edit the page, and it's going to give us a blank page to work with. Now at the top, I'm going to select this component 3, and on the right-hand side, I'm going to add in that this is our account information in the title property. Give it something that's understandable. Then I'm going to increase the columns property on the right-hand side to a 3. And what I'm going to do, or I guess let's do a 4. So I'll do a 4 column wide. And we're just going to add in content into this place. So I'm going to add in the account name right here. We'll add in, let's say, the parent account ID. Then we'll do something like account type inside of this one. And for account type, let's also do website. We'll do website here. Now for the account type, what I'd like to do is change this from a pick list to a radio button. So on the right hand side there is a view as radio button checkbox. I can simply select this, and then instead of having it displayed horizontally, I'm going to display it vertically. There we go. So now it's going to be displayed as a radio button when we're actually deployed into Salesforce. Okay, the second column I'm going to have as, we'll say, the rating. I'll put in a ticker symbol and maybe something like ownership. Let's see, account number. We'll do account phone number in the next column, account fax number. Let's see, I did account site could be another one. But you get the point. You're basically just going to create a bunch of different sections with all of your fields, right? You create the different sections, and this is a fairly basic part of the creation process. Now, once you're done doing this, this is fairly basic. We notice at the top we have 3 buttons that come with the page by default. We have the next, the back, and the cancel button. This allows you to traverse through the wizard forward and backward. Since I'm on page 1, there's not really a need for the back button. So I'm just going to strip off the back button, and I simply want the person to be able to cancel starting the record creation process or move into the next step. So step number 2, what I'd like to have happen is I'm going to create a second page. So I just add another page, and there's page number 2. And we're going to edit this one. And page number 2, I'm going to add in all of the address information, so the billing and shipping data as an example. So I'll just call this my address information at the top. And in column number 1, I'm going to have all of the shipping information, and column number 2, I'll have all of the billing information. So I'll just put the street name, put the city, put the state, and the zip code. And we'll do country. Now, for those of you who've never used SkyVisualEditor before, there's some nuances about designing things within the confines of how Salesforce likes to do it. So if you wanted to ever get crafty with how you design a section, here's one thing that you could do to kind of give individual columns a multi-column variant in the middle of it. What you would do is go to the page block section on the component palette, and you would drag it onto the canvas. And then you can give it however many columns you'd like. I'll leave it at 2. And for this section, component 67 doesn't make sense. I'm actually going to uncheck the show header checkbox on the right-hand side. So I'll just uncheck that, and there we go. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm still going to be looking for the shipping. I'm going to add in the longitude and the latitude coordinates for this. So what I've done essentially is within the first column, at the very end, I've actually split it up into a 2-column section within. So this is what I mean by if you ever need to have sections that all of a sudden have multiple column width in the middle of a single column on a page, this is how you would do it within SkyVisualEditor. So this can be done. It just has to be understood how Salesforce works to make this happen. Next, what did I say? The billing. Yes. So we'll go into the billing, and we'll just quickly add this in. We'll do city, city next, and then state, and then we will do zip code, and then country. There we go. Okay, and if we want to reproduce that same section down at the bottom, you could do that as well. For the sake of time, I'm not going to bother with it. Now for this third page, what we're going to do is we're going to have the user enter in some related data. Now I don't want this section, component 91 is not relevant anymore. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on a page block, 2 page blocks actually. This first page block I'm going to retitle contact data. Contact data. So when they get onto this page, I want them to enter in all of the contacts that are associated with the account. And essentially what's going to take place is they're going to be creating the account, and they're also going to be creating related information across multiple objects. So the top section is going to be where they enter in all the contacts. The bottom section is going to be where they enter in any, we'll say, tasks that need to be done. So we'll say this one is tasks. Open tasks. Open tasks right there. There we go. And we then can create them across both objects. Now, in order to actually get the table of data onto the page for the user to interact with, we do need to move the data table onto the screen. So I'll drag one on, and it's going to ask us what object we'd like to have displayed on the page. So I'll choose contact. There's a series of properties that exist. I'm going to uncheck the remove required. And basically what that will do if you leave the remove required in place is it's going to remove the little red bar that is displayed visually for the user to know a field's required. I like that red bar, so I'm going to leave that in place. I'm going to do the same thing for the task. So I'll just open this back up, choose the task object, remove the required, and place this back on. Perfect. Now we need to get the columns actually filled in with some data. So we'll go to the Object tab, to the Related Object tab, choose the object that we want to fill in first. So we'll choose Contact. And we're going to add in the basic parameters behind the column name. So I'll add in the first name, we'll add in the last name. Notice the red bar is there since I unchecked the Remove Required. We will do email, and we'll do phone, email, there we go. We'll do phone number, and then we're going to do, let's do title. So I'll insert, right-click, insert a new column, and then here I will place a title into the page. There we go. So now the user, if you notice right to the top left of where the first name column is, there's an Add button. This is going to allow the users to click the Add button and inline create contact records. So they can have some finite control over how they're interacting with that table of data. For the task, I would like there to be the subject, the status, and the priority. And then maybe if we want to get really nice to the support guys or people who are looking at this, we'll say that there's also a description of what's taking place. There we go. And then for the last, I guess second to last page, we're going to do this exact same thing again, but this is going to be with an opportunity object. So we're going to rinse and repeat. I go to the component palette, place the page block on, call this the opportunity data. Then we're going to drag on a data table, select the opportunity from this list. I'm going to remove required, and we will put in 4 columns for this one. We're going to go back to the object palette, related objects, and if you notice in this pick list, contact and task are not present. That's because in this relative object drop-down menu, we only show the objects that are actually present on the page. So since contact and task are not actually on the page, there's no need to list them on the left-hand side, as we don't want to cause any confusion. So you just have the opportunity here. We're going to drop on the name. We'll drop on the amount. We will place on the close date, and we'll say the stage of it. Okay, so there we go. We've got that. Now for the final piece of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place on the confirmation screen or the summary screen. Now if you notice, this was not lit up in the very beginning, and that's because the summary screen, what it does is when I click this, it's going to take all of the information from the previous 4 screens and dump it into one central place. So I didn't have to create this. It just takes all the data from the previous screens and puts them in one location. Okay, so I am going to have to come back up here and rename this to account information. And then you can modify and change this page as you see fit. Now, we're basically done with the wizard template, but there's a couple of other modifications that I'd like to make. With most flows or with most kind of prompter types processes, you typically have conditions by which users traverse through this big tree that you're going to create. So as an example, I have 5 pages in this. Now, maybe the user, when they're creating or editing a record, do not need to go through all 5 pages. So I'm going to replicate that necessity to skip some of the pages if the account type doesn't warrant them to actually fill in all the data. And you may be thinking, what in the world? How do you do that? Well, here's how. When you click on the next button, there is a destination page property. So go ahead and click this ellipsis. In here, you can tell the page the conditions by which they should transfer and the conditions to which page they should transfer to. So the condition itself and the destination. So we're going to go ahead and add a conditional logic into this. And we're going to say that when the account type is equal to prospect, we want them to transition to page 2. And we're going to add a new condition that says when the account type is not equal to prospect, they choose anything else but prospect, then we want this destination to go to page 4. So we're going to assume that the next page, if it's not a prospect, that we already have contacts in there, and we already have their billing and shipping information, so we simply need to add in a new opportunity. And then we're done. So we're going to go ahead and deploy this page into Salesforce and start working with it. So go ahead and go to File, click Deploy. It's going to ask you whether you're in a sandbox or developer environment or production. Choose the appropriate and click Deploy. Now what happens here is we actually save the file into our platform as an encrypted XML file. We only save the structure of the page. We don't touch any Salesforce data. And then we deploy the page directly to Salesforce, so you have all the Visualforce code and the Apex extensions and all that stuff there. So here's the name of it in case you want to go track it down inside of Salesforce. We're going to go ahead and click Open and take a look at the page that we just created. So if you notice here, we've got a Salesforce page with 4 columns across the top. And we're going to go ahead and create one. We'll call this our test page, right? And we can fill in some data here. We'll do website test.com. We'll choose this first one as a prospect. We'll say this was, we'll just fill in some of this information real quick. The phone number. There we go. and SIC code, 345, and chemicals. Now it's not really important as to what I fill out across the top. The only thing that mattered in this particular page was the account name, since that's required, and then the account type is going to dictate where I go next when I click the next button. Since I'm prospect, since the prospect type is selected, when I click the next button, I'm going to be taken to page 2, and this is where I have the billing and shipping information to be entered. If I click the next button here, so I'll go ahead and I'll just enter in some data here, just so you can see this. We'll call this Newport Road. We'll say it's in Austin, Texas, because that's where I'm at, and 78703. All right, so that's in the U.S. here. Now when I click next, it's going to take me to page 3, which is where I enter in the contact data and the task. So this allows me to inline create contact records, right in line with all this. So here's all of my information, Gmail, terrasky.com, and my phone number. All right, so then we have a task that we can create. So we'll just call this call executives, and we'll just add in some temporary data here. So we'll say call executives tomorrow. And as we click next, it'll take us into the 4th page. So again, we're just traversing down the line page by page since we had the opportunity type as prospect. Now if we were to go back, we're going to cycle back through the pages one by one. But if I were to change the account type to, let's say, a channel partner instead, and I click the next button, it's going to skip the first 2 and take me immediately to the 4th page, because that's the logic that I put in place. Now inside of our studio, if we come back into the transition logic area, you'll notice that you can get really complex with this transition logic, because you can add in as many layers of the line items that you need, and then you would just in here put in the conditions by which the and or logic needs to be put together. So you can get as fancy with that conditional rendering and redirecting as need be. But we're going to go ahead and enter in some opportunity data here. So I'll go ahead and I'll call this my test opportunity. And it's for an amount of $15. It's got a close date of today and a stage of prospecting. And as I click next, it's going to take us to the final page, which is the summary page. Now I didn't do anything fancy with this, but you can get in there and create this page however you like. And on this page, again, this is just a summation page. What did you enter in? So if you notice down here at the bottom, it does retain all of the information that you type into the wizard. So even though I backed out to the very beginning and chose a different prospect type, I'm sorry, not prospect type, account type, it still maintained the contact and the task information in there. So as you're traversing through the wizard, it is going to retain all of the data entered in. You don't lose any of it just because you go back and forth. So that's quite a nice feature. But because of that, you do need to make it abundantly clear to the users that if they do something like that, that they actually look through this summary screen to verify that they don't need to enter in any of this information if it's unnecessary. And then finally, when they click Save, this will obviously save the record for the account, and then it's going to create the contact, the task, and the opportunity, and then automatically associate it back to the account for the user. So that being said, I'm going to leave the last couple of minutes open for Q&A, and then we can get to the point where if you guys have any questions, just feel free to type them into the questions panel. The recording is going to stop here. So thank you so much for joining, and then this is a recorded session, so it will be sent out to you again within a couple of days. So thanks so much for joining.